Hey, what's going on, guys? Welcome back to another video. Now, I recorded this entire thing and completely forgot to record my screen, so we're doing this round two. But in this video, I wanted to show you guys how I edit some moody street photography. We're going to be creating a preset, which you will be able to apply to other images and save for yourself. This preset will also be available in the description if you want to download the XMP file. But if you want to learn how it was created and see how I methodically go through all the settings and adjust values, then you can stick around and watch this video. But what we're going to be doing is starting with this photo that I took in Melbourne right here, and we're going to be diving right into Lightroom. So with that said, we've got our photo open. Now, first thing we're going to be doing is cropping it. So we're going to be cropping this for Instagram. Go to our crop tool. We're going to be doing 4x5, and we're going to be making this smaller. I don't want this sign at the top in the photo. Now, when I am cropping this, I am keeping in mind that even though it's 4x5, I'm also kind of imagining a square around the photo, sort of inside the crop, because that's what's going to be seen on your actual grid. And personally, I don't like it when in the actual square on your Instagram grid, when the feet or head are cut off. So I try to keep the subject relatively centered for this kind of stuff. So when it goes to square, the subject is completely inside the square on your grid. So that's why I'm not going to be following this rule here. I know a lot of people are like eyes on the rule of thirds. I don't necessarily follow that for that reason. So we'll hit enter. So we're just going to, actually, I'm just going to turn, okay, not what I wanted. Come on. Nope. Oh, what are you doing, Lightroom? Okay, we're just gonna make that bigger right here. Looks about right. Oh. Okay, it's tripping out here. Hold on. Lightroom is not having a good time. Okay, I think we're good now. No, why are you doing this? Okay, so now that that's fixed, I don't know what was going on there, but Lightroom was having a heart attack. So we've got our photo cropped. Now the first thing that I want to do with this photo is first adjust the calibration within the camera. So we're going to be scrolling down all the way down to our calibration settings. And the reason we're going to be messing with this is because I want all these sort of yellow colors here, all these kind of yellow colors to be more of an orange color, because before we even start adjusting sliders, I want Lightroom to be seeing this image as the colors in the color space that I want it to be seen. So we're going to be doing that within our calibration. So calibration is basically telling Lightroom that anything that is, this sort of yellow color, if we just drag our reds over here, you can see that it's like saying, I want you to be seeing the skin tones as this yellow color as opposed to the original color that it is. So that's what the calibration generally does. And we're just going to be moving this. We're going to be doing sort of a split. So we're going to be moving the reds to the right, and we're going to be moving the blues to the left. So something like this looks good to me. Now you can see right away, if we just toggle these two right here, our yellows are more orange and our blues are more bright cyan kind of color, which is a good start, but we're going to be balancing that out with the saturation. So as you can see with our saturation, if I drag this to the left under our blues are going to desaturate within the genes. And we're going to drag this to about 30, around there, looks good. And we're going to be offsetting the skin tones, because I do notice when I do this split with the red blue, our skin tones kind of look a little bit orangey, and we can actually offset that with our green. So you can see here on my arm, if I drag the green to the right, it looks kind of pink. But if I start dragging it to the left, it kind of brings it back into that skin tone color space. So we're going to have this at about 19, 18, and about the same for our saturation. You can see that is strictly saturating and desaturating the skin, which is what we're looking for in this particular situation. Something less like this looks pretty good. We're not going to touch our red saturation because personally I don't want it to be saturated, and I kind of like what's going on with it at 0. So that's a great start. Now if you just hit Y on your keyboard, you can kind of see the difference our calibration is making. Basically, everything that's yellow now looks a little bit more orange, and the blues look a little bit more blue. We'll hit Y on our keyboard again, and we're going to come up to the top and start adjusting our basic values. So we're going to leave our color temperature and our tint. We're going to actually come back to that after we add some blues into our shadows a little bit later in the edit. But first thing we're going to be adjusting is our basic adjustments here. So our exposure, highlight, shadows, that kind of stuff. Now for something like this, I do notice some people with street photography like to bump up their highlights, but personally I like to lower them. Now we're not going to be flattening our image like this. I do not think this is good for street photography. I really like the depth that those shadows bring. So we're going to be doing something that's more like this. So a slight split, but not too much of a split. So maybe like this, and we'll bring these, yeah, 35 is pretty good to me. Around there, and we're just going to bring our whites up just so they kind of brighten just a little bit. Now with that said, it is still a little bit dark around the face. Now just ignore these massive bags under my eyes. I feel like I hadn't slept in like 6 days in this photo, but I was sleeping. But what I would normally do is just brighten those up, and we'll do that at the end after we add our contrast and whatnot through our tone curve. So next we're going to be tackling our texture and our clarity. So texture kind of works like the structure filter on Instagram. If you drag that to the right, it's going to make everything look extremely structured. I don't even know how to, bold almost, like very sharpened almost. So we can kind of use the texture and clarity to offset this sort of look, where we can kind of bring in a little bit of texture and bring back a little bit of clarity. What that's going to do is smoothen out some of the skin tones and some of the textures, as well as bring back some of the edge sort of structure, if that makes sense. They kind of work together in unison when balancing out the effect. So I like to do just a little split, or if I'm doing a vintage photo, that's when I'll drag everything to the left and do something like that. But for the sake of this street photo, we do want a little bit of texture because we do want those details to be in our asphalt and all that. So with that said, we are going to be moving on to the next thing here. Now actually we're just going to bring up some contrast, just a little bit of contrast, just bring that back. And we're going to be moving on to our tone curve. Now, as you can see on our tone curve, we don't have much detail going on here in the whites. And what I personally like to do with my tone curve is actually clip the blacks and the whites so we don't have pure black or pure white in our image at all. And then do a rather subtle S-curve. Now we're just going to grab the left side of our tone curve, so this is our shadows, and we're going to bring that up just a little bit. And we are going to be doing the same with our whites, so we're just going to bring those down just a little bit here. So you can see already we don't have any sort of harsh blacks and whites in our scene. And now we're going to create a small sort of S-curve. So we'll just bring the blacks down. We're going to make 2 points down here, something like this. And we're going to do the same at the top where the highlights are. And one right in the middle because we do want our grays to kind of stay relatively neutral with something like this. So you can already see the massive amounts of contrast that we've added to our image here. In fact, we'll just bring this a little bit down like so. I do want the tone curve to be relatively subtle because I know the power that it has. You can see it right here, adding tons of darkness and contrast. In fact, with this, with that done, I would even come back and maybe bring out just a little bit of those shadows, maybe about there. Just bring them in a little bit more just so we have a little bit more detail in the face. Then we will go in with the radial filter and fix up some of those harsh shadows that you see on the face in a second. Now, those shadows I find are very unavoidable with street photography and the sort of moody, dark, crunched, contrasty feel that you get with these kind of edits. So let's move on from that. We're going to keep our tone curve as is. It looks pretty solid to me. And we're going to come down here and start working on our Hsl sliders. So for just simplicity's sake, usually I work on all, but we're just going to come do hue. So we just have our hue sliders. Now these are controlling our colors. And what we're going to be doing is dragging our reds to the side here, making it a little bit more towards the pinks. And we're going to be dragging our yellows more towards the oranges. So you can see up here is where we're making a big difference with this one. And we're just going to drag those over to about here. We're going to keep these both around 50. Looks good. And we're just going to leave our oranges. I don't want to drag those to the reds because our orange channel, especially with street photography, about 95% of the time you'll find all of your skin tones within the orange channel. And you'll find stuff like asphalt and concrete inside the yellow channel. So if you have any yellow hues on your asphalt or back here, you can see that inside your yellow channel, and we're going to correct that in just a second. Now we're going to come down here to our blues. So we're going to tackle these pants here, and we're just going to make them a little bit more blue. So we'll just drag the blues to the right. And we can do the same thing with our aqua, just a little bit to the right. You will notice that the blues in this case is actually targeting our entire outfit. So it's even hitting the shirt here, which I lost, by the way. I don't know where it went, somewhere in Australia. Very sad about that. I really love this shirt. And you'll notice that the aqua is kind of just tackling our jeans and our shirt here, the white shirt, a little bit more direct. So we can kind of pull those over as well. And with that analysis, we can know that the blues will be moved very subtly, because we don't want to be affecting too much of the shirt, as we're kind of just trying to dial in that color on the jeans. So next we've got our saturation. So here's where you'll notice a big difference in our image. We're going to start getting in those really moody tones and those kind of muted colors. So first thing we're going to be doing is grabbing our red here. Actually, we'll leave the red. We're going to grab our orange. This is our skin tones, remember? And we're going to drag those down. We're going to drag those down to about 27%. Around there, so you can see already on my arms, they are directly affecting that. And you can see with the yellow, if we just cut that all the way out, we lose, basically takes out any sort of warmth that you'll see here in the asphalt and a little bit of the color on the side here. So you can just bust that up, you can see, and of course on the walls here. So with most street photography, I often cut the yellows completely. You'll notice it in some of the other photos as well, that the yellow is directly corresponding to the asphalt. Not as much in this one, but the other ones you will notice that. We're going to leave our greens. There's no greens in this photo. If there are greens, you might want to desaturate them. And we're going to do the same with our aqua. I'm just going to bring that down. You can kind of see it is directly affecting our jeans. And when we bring this down to -100, it actually brings our jeans more into the faded color space that we have on our original photo. Now, if we have that all the way up, you can see they look a little bit too saturated for the vibe we're going for. And we might even just desaturate the blues just a little bit. Now, we're not going to be touching the purples and the magentas at all, because there is none of that in the scene. But if there is any purple or magenta, you can desaturate it, of course. Now, if you have any fringing, I know there's no chromatic aberration or fringing in this particular photo. It's very common where a very bright spot meets a dark spot. You just get that purple sort of fringing around the lines. You can kind of fix some of that also by desaturating the purple and magentas, or by hitting this button down here, remove chromatic aberration, which I always have checked. So we're going to go next. That's pretty much it for our saturation. We're going to keep these as is. Again, no red in the scene. If there was red, I would also be desaturating the red as well. Now next we have our luminance slider. So the luminance is something that you need to pay close attention to, especially with street photography, because it can make or break your image. Now, what is luminance? Luminance is essentially an exposure control for each individual color, which is extremely powerful in situations like this. So for example, our skin tones are in the orange. If we cut those out, you'll notice that just our skin tones and a little bit of details in the back have lost all their color and brightness, essentially. So what we're going to do is just bring that up a little bit, just kind of add a little bit of brightness to our skin tones here, just a smidgen. And we're going to bring down our yellows just to push these into our background just a little bit more. And we are going to bring up our blues. Actually, you know what? We're going to bring down the blue just a little bit. We're going to make these a little bit, kind of push them into the background, make them a little bit less bright. And that looks pretty good to me. The aquas, nah, let's keep that around 0. Green, there's no green in the image. Reds. So the reds is kind of tackling my skin a little bit here, and I do like when it's lower on the face here, because obviously when it's up like this, I see that my forehead and my cheeks here are kind of getting a little bit blown out. So we're just going to kind of keep this a little bit on the negative. That looks pretty good to me. And I would say that is pretty much it for our Hsl sliders. So make sure you guys got these copied down. And next we have our color grading. So a new feature within the newest version of Lightroom. And what we're going to be doing is adding some cold, cool tones to our shadows and our highlights. So we're not going to be affecting the midtones as much with this one, but we are going to be grabbing our shadows here, and we're going to be moving those to about here. Just add some blue. You can kind of see the blue coming in on the asphalt. And we're going to do the same to our highlights here. So something about here, maybe a darker blue looks good. Now, at this point in the edit, you will notice everything is looking relatively cold. Now, the edit that I'm going for is a little bit warmer than this, and we can easily fix this with our temperature, which we talked about at the beginning that we were going to be coming back to. So we're going to come all the way up to the top here, and we're going to counteract all this blue by just dragging the temperature over a little bit to the right. And you can see right here it warms up the image and gives us those really nice tones going on in the shadows. So if we just hit Y on our keyboard, you can see the before and after. And just that little switch here from here to here in our temperature, personally, I think that makes all the difference. So that's pretty much it for this specific preset. Now, what we're going to be doing, we can even add a little bit of sharpness to this. So I'll just hold Alt on the mask, and we'll get our little mask here, maybe about there. Just because I want sharpening to be affecting the edges, not the entire image as a whole. That's how you introduce a lot of noise. You can, of course, use noise reduction. We're not going to use that. But that is pretty much it. You can, of course, add a little bit of a vignette if you would like. Now, to further fix up this photo, one thing I would definitely 110% do is just grab some filters here and fix up these horrible shadows I have under my eyes. Something like this and like this. Looks a little bit, already looks better. Now my skin is looking a little bit orange in my opinion, so what we can do, we're just going to come down here to our hue saturation sliders, and we're just going to adjust maybe about there. Looks a lot better. So we're just going to pull our oranges a little bit away from our reds and into our yellows just to counteract the skin tones here, because we don't want to look orange, we want to look natural. So that is pretty good for me. We're just going to zoom out. And this is essentially our final edit, guys. So we're just going to bring just a little bit down. Looks good. And what you can also do if you want to make your subject stand out that much more, grab another radial filter and put it over your subject like this. We're going to go to feather 100 because we want a full feather from 100% here to 0 out here. And then we're just going to increase our exposure just a little bit, just to kind of make your subject pop a little more with that foreground. So guys, that's pretty much it for this preset. Now what we're going to be doing is saving this preset out, which we've already done here, but we're going to be saving it again. And then we're going to be applying it to these other photos as well. One thing I just want to check here, we're just going to adjust, yeah, there we go. That looks a little better. We're just going to pull that tint just a little bit over, just kind of take out these magentas in the tint and just push it a little bit towards the greens. I think this looks super moody and cool. But now we're going to save this out and we're going to be applying it to these 3 other images and showing you kind of how you can manipulate values or which values need to be manipulated in order to achieve a similar look and feel on the other images. So what we're going to do is hit our plus icon under our presets, create preset. Now I already have this created because I recorded this entire video already, but we're going to do it again. MOODY Street Preset. And we're going to save this just under light and airy. Now for our actual settings here, what we're going to be doing is make sure that radial filters is unchecked. We don't want our radial filters to be carrying over for every image. Any noise reduction, I always uncheck that stuff. Effects, transform, we don't want our preset to be cropping new images. We're going to be doing all that manually. And our exposure. Now the reason I don't save exposure data is because this will actually allow you to apply the correct exposure to some images. I know some people underexpose their images on purpose. So you can fix the exposure and then preview your preset at that corrected exposure, as opposed to having exposure data inside the preset where every time you preview a preset it might still be too dark or blow it out too bright because it's applying that exposure data on top of your preset. So this looks pretty good to me. We're just going to hit create. And you'll notice we have our preset right here, MOODY Street preset. It's funny, these are all like slightly a little bit different as I made this video, but I think this one's looking pretty good. I think there's something that I'm missing here. Something feels like I am missing. But what might it be? Okay, I think I'm going to leave it there for now. What I'm going to do, guys, I'm going to give you this one as well. I don't know exactly what it is that's making it so slightly different. But it is just so slightly different. Anyways, I'm going to give you guys both these presets so you'll be able to play with them yourself. But what we're going to be doing is applying it to our next 3 images. We're going to go to our next one here. We've got this guy on a bike, and we're just going to crop this really quickly. Crop it down, and we are going to hover over our images. Actually, first we're just going to adjust the exposure. So get the exposure correct, and now when we hover over our images here, our presets, sorry, we're going to get an actual accurate depiction of what it's going to look like. So we'll apply our street preset, and for this image, I think we're just going to straighten that a little bit, and we're going to make it a little bit cooler. I do like the kind of steel look that you kind of get with this one, especially what's going on with the asphalt. Straighten that out a little bit more. I do like, yeah, like the steel kind of steel blues, I want to call them, kind of going on in the car here as well as his bike. So this looks pretty good to me. One thing I would definitely do, grab a radial filter. We're just going to bring up that exposure. And what we're going to do is come down here and bring our vignette up just to bring a little bit more attention to our subject. So of course, before and after looks pretty awesome to me. Now with this one, I believe if we do the yellows, you can kind of see like some of the yellow coming in here as well as in here. If I just crank that up, it's very subtle, and of course up here, but it's rather subtle, but you can see that if I just destroy the yellow, take that out completely, that it goes into this nice sort of steel color for the asphalt. So this looks pretty good to me. Let's apply this to our next image here. So again, we're going to crop this. Crop it down so she is relatively centered. Hit OK. And right about there. And we're going to apply our preset. Now it's a little bit dark. We'll bring up our exposure. And we have to fix a couple things. I think that the highlights on her forehead are just a little bit too intense. Now, I do know that if we go into our luminance, we can actually fix this with our orange luminance. You can see if I drag that down, it fixes the colors up here. And we might actually have to just make it a little bit cooler just to fix that oranginess in her skin. If we hit Y on our keyboard, you can kind of see what's going on here. And under our saturation, our hue, let's adjust our skin tones. So for this particular image, we're going to actually drag our orange from being a little bit towards the right to actually a little bit towards the left and bring back some of those reds into the skin. So this is already looking a lot nicer. Maybe just about there. You can look at the yellows. So the yellows is directly affecting her forehead. Now, a lot of sort of applying a preset to a new image is kind of trial and error, figuring out what is affecting what on your new image and correcting from there. But this looks pretty good in my opinion. We're going to hit Y, and that is our shot. Now, of course, we can add our filter to make her pop a little bit more from our background. And we can also come down here and add our vignette if you would like it to be even more on your subject. So hit Y, we've got our before and after. And we have our last image here, this beautiful Lamborghini. Now I'm also going to show you how to get rid of this phone. Pay attention to the details, guys, because it's annoying when you miss this kind of stuff, but it happens. We're going to just remove it in post. But we're going to crop our image real quick. And we are going to apply our preset. So this looks awesome for cars. This preset looks super moody. We're just going to bring up the exposure a little bit, like so. And we're actually going to reduce the saturation here on our yellows because it's affecting these lines here. Looks good to me. And let's get rid of this phone. So how are we going to do that? We're going to use our spot removal. Drag over our phone. And we're going to just drag this sample from here. Just line up these lines. And we're going to adjust our feather. So we have a little bit of a feather. And looks good. Bam, our phone is gone. Not completely. Down a little bit. There we go. Maybe a little more feather. Oh, right there. All right. Looks good to me. Okay. So now that our phone is gone, we've got our Lamborghini shot. So guys, that is pretty much it for this video. Again, if you guys want to just download this preset, it's going to be available in the description so you guys can use it for your own photos. If you do end up using this photo, feel free to tag me. I love seeing what you guys create. If you've made it this far in the video, don't forget to like the video, hit that subscribe button. It helps me out a ton, and I will catch you guys in the next one.